There is a glass-bottom boat that has floated the Silver River in central Florida for over 100 years. Tourists come for the springs. Water so clear it looks like the boat is hanging in air. But for the last 80 years, the main attraction hasn't been the water. It's been the animals in the trees along the bank. Wild monkeys, hundreds of them, in Florida. They are not supposed to be here. They are Rhesus macaques, native to the forests of South and Southeast Asia, Afghanistan, India, China, some 8,000 miles from the Silver River. And they are not a zoo exhibit or an escaped pet. They are a full, breeding, wild population established for generations, spreading through the Florida woods and carrying inside them a virus that kills more than half the people it infects. Here's what makes this a genuine mystery, and not just a curiosity. Florida has known about these monkeys for decades. The state has studied them, funded them, trapped them, banned feeding them, and at one point removed 1,000 of them. And the population didn't collapse, it grew. It left the park. It's turning up in cities 100 miles away. So the question underneath this whole story is simple, and nobody has a good answer to it. How does a state that hunts pythons for sport, that drains swamps and reshapes coastlines at will, completely fail to stop a few hundred monkeys? By the end, you'll see why the honest answer is that Florida may have already lost. If this is the kind of story you can't look away from, go ahead and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps the channel. And tell me one thing while you're here. Where in the world are you watching from? And did you have any idea there were wild monkeys in Florida? Drop it in the comments. I read them. Now let's get into it. To understand how this happened, you have to meet the man who did it and clear away the myth first. For decades, the story people told was that the monkeys escaped during the filming of a Tarzan movie at Silver Springs in 1939. It's a great story. It's also false. There were no Rhesus macaques in that film, and the monkeys were already living in the woods before the cameras arrived. The truth is smaller and stranger. In the 1930s, the man who ran the glass-bottom boat operation, a showman who called himself Colonel Toohey, decided that live monkeys would make his jungle cruise more exciting and sell more tickets. So around 1938, he bought roughly 6 Rhesus macaques and released them onto a small island in the middle of the Silver River. And this is the detail the entire story turns on. Toohey put them on an island because he believed monkeys couldn't swim. He was wrong. Rhesus macaques are strong, willing swimmers. Within minutes, some accounts say within days, his monkeys had crossed the water and vanished into the forest on the far bank. He tried again. He bought 6 more and released them on the north shore. Those escaped too. And that was that. A dozen animals, released to sell boat tickets, walked off into the Florida woods and never came back. And everything that has happened since, every headline, every study, every warning, traces back to that one man's mistake about whether a monkey can swim. By 1968, a survey counted 78 of them. The colony was established, and it was just getting started. The obvious question is why they didn't just die. Drop a dozen tropical Asian monkeys into the American South, and you'd expect a hard winter or a lack of food to end it fast. It didn't, because Florida turned out to be almost perfect for them. The Rhesus macaque is arguably the most adaptable primate on Earth after humans. In its native range, it thrives everywhere from cold Himalayan foothills to crowded city streets, and it's the monkey you see raiding temples and markets across Asia. It eats almost anything: leaves, fruit, seeds, insects, bird eggs, human garbage. It tolerates heat and cold, and it breeds reliably, producing close to a new generation every year. Central Florida handed it a subtropical forest laced with rivers, swamps, and springs, warm, wet, green year-round, thick with food, and with very few natural predators willing to take on a troop of monkeys. There was no jungle competition, no leopards, nothing that had evolved to hunt them here. So the population did what an adaptable species does when you drop it into an empty, friendly landscape. It grew. Slowly at first, then steadily, then fast enough to alarm the people whose job it was to watch it. For a long time, the monkeys were treated as a quirky local attraction. Then scientists took a hard look at what was inside them, and the story changed completely. Rhesus macaques are the natural host of a virus called herpes B, technically macaque herpes virus 1. In the monkey, it does almost nothing. Most infected macaques show no symptoms at all, the same way most people carry cold sore herpes without trouble. The monkey and the virus have lived together for millions of years. In a human being, it is one of the most lethal viruses you can catch from an animal. The numbers are stark. Human infection with herpes B is rare. only about 50 documented cases worldwide, almost all in lab workers bitten or scratched while handling captive macaques. But of those 50, 21 died. Untreated, herpes B attacks the nervous system and the brain, and roughly half of untreated infections end in fatal encephalitis. It is a coin flip virus. Now here's why that matters for a wild population in a public park. Researchers from the University of Florida tested the Silver Springs monkeys and found that around a quarter of them, by some measures up to 30%, carried herpes B, and they didn't just carry it. A 2018 study published by the CDC found that during the fall mating season, when the males grow aggressive and stressed, some of these macaques actively shed the virus in their saliva and other fluids. Shedding means transmissible. It means a bite, a scratch, or contact with the wrong fluid could, in theory, pass a virus that kills half the people it reaches. And the routes of exposure are exactly the ones a wild, food-habituated monkey creates. Herpes B spreads through bites, through scratches, and through contact with infected saliva, urine, or feces. Rhesus macaques are not tidy neighbors. A stressed or agitated monkey will fling waste, mark territory, and lunge at people who get between it and a free meal. A troop moving through a boardwalk, a picnic area, a riverbank where children swim, leaves exactly the kind of contaminated surfaces the virus can, in theory, travel on. To be clear and fair, there has never been a confirmed case of a person catching herpes B from a wild monkey in Florida or anywhere. Not one. But the state's own public health assessment landed on a sentence that should stop you. The presence of these monkeys must be considered a public health concern. A wild animal in a park where families picnic, carrying a virus with a 50% kill rate and actively shedding it in the fall. And these are not distant, shy animals keeping to the deep swamp. That's the other half of the danger. 80 years of tourists throwing food has produced monkeys with no fear of people at all. They approach, they beg, they climb on picnic tables and raid coolers. They've learned that humans mean food, and a bold, food-conditioned wild animal is a very different thing from a wild one that flees. The bite record is real. In the years around the early 1980s, state wildlife authorities logged 23 reports of macaques biting people in or near the park. More recently, the encounters have been dramatic enough to make the news. A troop of monkeys raiding a backyard deer feeder in Ocala, aggressive males cornering visitors on the boardwalks, footage of monkeys diving off the trees and cannonballing into the springs right where people swim. In 2018, the situation was serious enough that a section of Silver Springs was temporarily closed to the public because of aggressive monkeys. This is the collision the whole story has been building toward. You have a wild animal that carries a potentially fatal virus, that has completely lost its fear of humans, that has learned to associate people with food, living in one of the most popular state parks in Florida. Every element that would normally keep a dangerous wild animal and a family apart has been erased, one fed banana at a time. If you're still with me, hit subscribe because the next part is where Florida actually tried to fix this, and the way it failed is the reason the monkeys are still here. Keep going. So Florida tried to stop it, and this is where the story turns from a wildlife oddity into something genuinely hard. The population had climbed toward a peak of around 400 monkeys, and in 1984 the state launched a serious removal effort. Private trappers went in. Over the years that followed, they pulled roughly 1,000 macaques out of the Silver Springs population, captured, crated, and shipped out. On paper, that should have ended it. 1,000 animals removed from a population that peaked around 400 is more than the whole colony, several times over. And still, it didn't work. The monkeys that remained simply bred the number back up. Trappers who worked it said plainly that even after capturing hundreds, they didn't believe they'd made a serious dent. But the removal didn't just fail biologically, it collapsed politically, and that's the part that sealed the monkeys' future. Because the trapped monkeys weren't being relocated to some sanctuary. Many were sold to a company that supplied animals to biomedical research labs. When the public found out that Florida's beloved, charming, tourist attraction monkeys were being rounded up and sold for experimentation, there was an outcry, national news coverage, tearful protests, enormous pressure, and the trapping program was shut down. That is the trap the state has been stuck in ever since. The two options that could actually work are both unacceptable to the public. Culling the monkeys, simply killing them, is politically impossible. These are charismatic primates that people adore, not pythons nobody mourns. And trapping them means either research labs or a fight nobody wants to have again. Sterilization, the humane middle path, is enormously expensive and slow. One wildlife official described it exactly: a lose-lose situation. So the state landed on the only option left. It banned feeding the monkeys, and then, in effect, it stopped. For years, there has been no active population control program at all. The monkeys were left to do what they do. And with nothing holding them back, they started to move. For most of their history, the macaques stayed in and around Silver Springs, but a growing population pushes its edges outward, and young males, in particular, disperse, leaving the troop to find territory and mates of their own, exactly the way they're built to. And a Rhesus macaque can cover ground. Stray males from the Silver Springs colony have now turned up more than 100 miles from the park. They've been documented in Jacksonville on the northeast coast, in the Sarasota area to the southwest, near Tallahassee, the state capital, to the northwest. On New Year's Day, monkeys were spotted alongside a Florida highway. The colony has pushed into the Ocklawaha River system, and biologists warn it could establish entirely new breeding colonies in other parts of the state. And that dispersal is how a contained problem becomes an uncontainable one. Every young male leaving the colony is a seed. It only takes a few of them reaching the right patch of Florida swamp. Warm, wet, full of food, empty of predators, to start the entire process over again somewhere new. A fresh troop, in a new watershed, established before anyone thinks to look. And this time there's no trapping program watching the door. Set the virus aside for a moment, because even a perfectly healthy population of these monkeys is a problem for everything else that lives in the Florida woods. A Rhesus macaque is an opportunistic omnivore, and in a native ecosystem that never evolved alongside it, that's a quiet kind of catastrophe. They strip fruit and seeds that native birds and mammals depend on. They raid the nests of ground nesting and water birds and eat the eggs. They pull apart vegetation. In a state already fighting to protect fragile wetland habitat and threaten native species, dropping a clever, hungry primate into the mix tilts the whole system. And there's proof of how bad it can get, because it already happened once in Florida. Back in the 1970s, a separate group of released macaques in the Florida Keys didn't just live on their island, they ate it. They stripped the red mangrove so completely that the loss of the root systems triggered erosion of the shoreline itself. An island's coastline, reshaped by monkeys. Those are the ecological stakes underneath the whole story. It isn't only a question of whether a person gets bitten. It's whether a self-sustaining troop of the world's most adaptable monkey, spreading into new Florida watersheds with no predators and no plan to stop it, quietly rewrites a native ecosystem the way it rewrote that mangrove island, one stripped tree and one eaten nest at a time. So step back and look at why this specific animal has beaten a state that beats almost everything. Part of it is the biology. Rhesus macaques are intelligent, adaptable, fast-breeding, and they swim, climb, and range across exactly the kind of mixed forest and water landscape Florida is made of. They're hard to trap consistently and impossible to fence out. On pure biology alone, they'd be a difficult invasive. But that's not really why Florida can't stop them. Florida stops difficult invasives all the time. The state runs open hunting seasons on Burmese pythons. It pays bounties. It encourages people to kill iguanas. The Everglades is a war zone of invasive species management. The monkeys are different for one reason, and a wildlife biologist said it best when he compared them to the pythons. It's not a problem if it's catching pythons, because no one cares about snakes. But monkeys are not snakes. They have faces. They have babies that people photograph. They look like us. They act like us. And generations of Floridians and tourists have grown up loving them as the quirky, magical secret of Silver Springs. That affection is the real barrier. You cannot run a python-style cull on an animal the public adores. Every solution that works collides with the fact that people love the monkeys, and every solution that people can accept doesn't work. That is the box Florida has been stuck in for 40 years, and there is no obvious way out of it. The state isn't losing to the monkeys because they're unstoppable. It's losing because it can't bring itself to do the thing that would stop them. And so the numbers keep climbing, from a dozen escaped animals in the 1930s, to 78 by 1968, to a peak of 400 before the trapping, 1,000 removed, and still, today, Estimates of the Silver Springs population run from around 200 to over 300, and researchers have projected it could double again if nothing is done. Each generation more accustomed to people. Each fall mating season, shedding a virus that kills half the humans it infects. Each year, a few more young males walking north and west and south looking for somewhere new. This isn't a story that resolved. It's a story that's still running, in real time, in one of the most visited natural areas in Florida. The feeding ban is the only active policy. The trapping is over, the culling is off the table, and the animals, indifferent to all of it, keep doing the only thing they've ever done here: eat, breed, swim, and spread. Every few years the issue flares back into the news. A new study, a new bite, a new sighting a little farther from home, and the state says again that it's a concern, that management plans should be put in place. And then the cycle quiets and nothing much changes, and the monkeys go back to the trees along the river where the glass-bottomed boats still run. So the file stays open. We know exactly how it started: one showman, 6 monkeys, and a wrong guess about whether they could swim. We know what they carry, and we know it can kill. We know the state tried to stop them and couldn't, not because the monkeys were too clever, but because we were too fond of them. And we know they're still spreading, right now, into rivers and cities their ancestors never saw. What we don't know is how it ends. Whether a person will one day catch herpes B from a wild monkey along a Florida river. Whether a dispersing troop will take root in the Everglades, or the Keys, and do to a new place what the first monkeys did to those mangroves. Whether Florida will ever find a way to do the thing it can't quite bring itself to do. What is known is that the springs are still clear and the boats still run, and the monkeys are still there in the oaks along the bank, descendants of a dozen animals that were never supposed to leave a small island. That an entire wild population in the wrong hemisphere exists because of a single afternoon and a single wrong assumption. And that somewhere north of Silver Springs tonight, in a stretch of Florida woods where there have never been monkeys before, a young male is moving through the dark, looking for a river of his own, doing exactly what his kind has done in this state for 80 years, and what no one, so far, has found a way to stop.